Yo, this is Kid Acne. You're listening to the Cabbages podcast.
Welcome back, Gary.
Chef.
Gary, welcome back. We are back, baby.
We are back.
It's all you can eat.
All you
It's
can
a
eat.
Cabbages buffet. All you can eat. Krush Groove.
People might not realize
We
this
back.
because we dropped these bonus episodes in the latter part of the year, but we haven't done one of these since like September.
It's been a while.
We basically stopped.
It's been a while.
But we are here,
Hmm.
and we
Shout out
have
Stained.
come back with shout out Stained. We've come back with, I think, a really great opener. We picked a great movie. We have a great guest. I don't know what else to say.
I
Because
Crush
think
Groove.
we should Crush Groove with Kid Acne. Crush Groove with Kid Acne.
New Cabbages warning.
Hmm.
Just don't expect this all the time. That's all. I'm saying.
No,
Don't expect this all the time.
No.
Yeah, man. Let's crush it. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I'm into it. We do it. We got Crush Groove with Kid Acne.
I just didn't want to start chopping it up too much until, if I go down a tangent and then you're...
No, for sure. I suspect we'll go on some tangents, but yeah, honestly, as a huge Lex Records fan, and obviously a fan of Lexolium in particular, that compilation, like Rap Dracula was a song that just like was in my head for ages.
Wow.
And remains
Yeah.
there.
That came up yesterday as well on something. And
Oh,
I got offered a deal with Lex then when they started the label. And the idea was to put that one track on the compilation and then that album would follow. But I'd already set up my own label with my brother and my friends. And at the time, Tom, who ran Lex, was working at Warp. And I was being offered a few deals at that time. So it was just like another friend of mine was starting a label. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I didn't give it too much attention. But I was like, yeah, that would be cool. Except I've got my own label now and I want to put out my own records. So
sure.
then he was like, yeah, but we could do a good thing together, da da da. And there was a version of the album Council Pop that almost went out on Lex, but we couldn't decide on the running order or anything. And I was like, how about I just put this album out and I give you the next album, and thinking then I'll make another album next year. You know what I mean? And what happened in the meantime was Tom bought himself out of Warp. He did a joint venture with EMI. I did finally sign to Lex, but then I got upstream to EMI. Then the album I was making, the producer at the time lost all the material and his hard drive died. We rebuilt it.
Ooh.
Then the third time we had to rebuild it again to take out the samples because we were now on EMI.
Right.
Years went by. You know what I mean? So this record that could have come out in 2003, 2004 came out in 2007 on a different label, and it was a whole different thing. So it comes up quite a lot of this, my relationship with Lex, that it's taken me 20 years to deliver the album that I always wanted to deliver. But, back in my early 20s, I was just like, yeah, cool, I'll do another one for you, no problem. But we did have a word pre-lockdown. And then just as that was rolling, we got into lockdown. So I was like, okay, and I did the null and void in between. And then this time I feel like third time's the charm, Finally made the album I wanted to make for Lex.
I mean, I love Hauntology Codes. Like, I loved it so much, and it's gotten a lot of play in my house of late. I was just putting it on this morning. Actually, listened to a bunch of your records this morning just because. And Run-DMC for obvious reasons as well this morning.
Yes.
That's been my listening today has been sort of been you and Run-DMC.
Okay.
So just let's I'm gonna clue in the audience now just to who they're hearing and who we're talking to. I'm so excited to have on a genuine hip hop legend. Joining us now is Kid Acne. He's a seasoned practitioner of the hip hop pillars, the Sheffield-based artist, an MC. He's been dropping these dope albums for 2 decades now, more so than that. Produced by Cabbage's favorite Spectacular Diagnostics, his latest album for Lex Records is entitled Hauntology Codes, and it's available right now on Bandcamp, wherever music is streamed or sold. Hello, and welcome to the show, man.
Wow, thank you. No, thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Pleasure to be here.
We were so excited to pique your interest in this show in the first place. Obviously, what we do is a little different than, say, your traditional interview show. And
Sure.
of all the films we could have talked about, there's probably only 3 films I think that we could have had you as maybe the optimal guest for. And it's
Okay.
either Wild Style,
Yeah.
Beat Street, or
Yeah.
what we set out on, Crush Groove. Because I feel
Yes.
like if we're going to have you on, we got to talk about a classic. We got to talk about something classic, epic, meaningful. And I'd love to know kind of your kind of experience or impression of those 3 movies. Kind of, I'm sure this was not the first time you watched Crush Groove, I imagine.
You know what? It is. And
Fantastic. That's amazing.
that's why I wanted to
Whoa.
do it.
It's amazing.
Because, and I don't know why I had not seen it, because as you mentioned, Beat Street, Wild Style, Breakdance 1, Breakdance 2, even Downtown 81. I've seen all
Yeah,
these
sure.
films of that kind of era and this sort of the tropes that are in
Mhm.
Crush Groove. I hadn't seen it. I knew a couple of scenes from it, and I had to check with my brother because I was like, "Have I not seen it?" And he was like, "No." He got it on VHS from a charity shop
Mhm.
in the mid 90s, and I think he kind of told me it wasn't very good. So I just took his word
Okay.
for it
Sure. Yeah.
and forgot all about it. I watched Wild Style hundreds of times. Seen Star Wars hundreds of times.
Sure.
Beat Street I've watched a bunch of times. So yeah, it was interesting because if I had seen this back in the day, I mean, I
Mhm.
would have missed it the first time round.
Right. You were still
It's
a
hard.
kid.
It's hard for me to judge it on its own merit because I'm kind of comparing it to these other films that I talked about, and also I'm aware of when you see this stuff like after the fact, you may be more critical than just appreciating it for what it is.
Mhm.
Um, I would have missed it first time round, but I would have probably picked it up 10 years later. Mid 90s would have been the
Yeah.
optimum time for me to watch this. And, a huge fan of Run DMC, huge fan of Beastie Boys. So just for those bits alone, I think I would have really enjoyed this. So yeah, it was interesting to watch it in the last 2 weeks on your recommendation. Have you seen it before?
This was my first viewing of it as well. It's one of those things where like
Okay.
you hear about it, it's there, but I had never actually watched it. And I sort of didn't know what I was walking into necessarily because I sort of
Okay.
see the cover. The cover is sort of iconic. You've seen this, you see all the people who are on that cover, and it's like
Yeah, yeah.
it's a soundtrack to my 1980s. I grew up in New York, and so a lot of this stuff was playing around me, and so I always had this in my ears. So watching it now, it's just like a warm bath to all those performances. Just
Okay.
feels wonderful. But I'd never
Yeah.
seen it, and obviously I wouldn't have seen it in '85 because I would have been too young for it at that time
Same.
to go see it in the theaters. But I probably would have seen it sometime in the '90s, realistically. Jeff, this was
Yeah.
your first time too, or
Uh, kind of. I think I've kind of described this before on the show, but
Mm,
my sister ran an independent video store for a long time.
yeah,
And there's, you learn the limitations of what you can play in public.
Yep.
As far as movies, when people are in there, people complain about everything, everything.
Sure.
So a musical uh, is a good way to not to watch something with at least adult themes without it being too risque,
Yep.
and it's not a fucking cartoon for kids. You know what I
So,
mean? Like it's
so
not
you'd
Home
seen
Alone
it.
again.
Yeah.
But
So
I
you've
had
seen it in
seen it.
passing.
I'd been in the background of things.
Yeah.
And video people back in the day when they partied, there was always a movie on in the background of the party. And a
Yeah.
lot of times it would end up being something like this where we would walk through the room and be like, oh, sick. Oh, wow, the Fat Boys, like,
Yeah.
but I had never sat down and cover to cover crushed this movie, as it were.
Mm,
So I'm pretty much in the same boat. And
Okay.
I absolutely loved this.
Okay.
I had a blast with this thing. I mean, yeah, the acting's not phenomenal. There are some issues here and there, but like the performances, it was fun. They were obviously having fun. For some reason, it just felt really realistic and cool to see Russell Simmons get beat up a couple times. It felt like people really wanted to do that back then.
Yeah, I found it so distracting that he was actually in it, but in the background as a different character. I'm like,
Right.
Yeah.
guys, he's right there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Like,
But
well,
look,
everybody else played themselves. What the hell's going on here?
well,
Yeah,
look, if you were Russell Simmons and you could get Blair Underwood to play you in a movie, you'd get Blair Underwood to play you in a movie. There's no
Sure.
way
yeah,
I'd be like, I want to be
sure.
myself. Like they even had that scene where Blair Underwood's outside on the roof doing
Yeah,
pull-ups. Russell would not have done that on screen. He would not have gone shirtless on screen. I can't imagine that being the same thing. That said, he casts like the cast of this is, and I can sort of see like what you were saying before about your brother. Um, Not saying this is a particularly good movie because I think if you base it on the plot or the actual acting, it's like the reverse of Beat Street, where Beat Street is
yeah,
actors in the main roles and supporting roles by these stars of
Rappers,
hip hop and
right.
culture,
yeah,
rappers and other people in the culture, DJs and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then you have in this film, it's almost entirely reversed. Save for Blair Underwood, movie is like dominated, populated by the people. Sometimes they have the same names, sometimes they
yeah,
are versions of themselves, and there's always that goes on in this. And so you're getting this wide range of performances, mostly on one side. It was also the screenwriters. I might be getting ahead of ourselves, but our screenwriter's first movie. Um,
okay,
he'd written some Happy Days. He'd written something for some TV stuff as well before that, but this was his first feature. So it is an odd thing there.
The weird thing about it, and I don't have a lot of screenwriting background, but I have writing background for sure.
Mm.
It's almost like there's so little space outside of the performances, and you've got to cram a lot of information in there, and you have sort of novice actors in a lot of this. It's wild that this came off the way it did.
yeah. It's a
I
hard.
give a lot of credit to them getting a plot in, like shoehorning a plot into this thing, because it really is an hour and 10 minutes of performances and then some dudes being like, yo, this record label, we gotta get some money.
Yeah,
Oh, well, the Fat Boys are gonna go in here to an all-you-can-eat buffet and eat now for like
yes.
20 minutes.
It's a tenuous
Sick
plot.
about eating. Yeah.
It's a tenuous plot. It's hard to root for anyone in it because you're not really that invested in
Right.
anyone particularly.
No.
I would have loved to have seen more than 8 bars of Beastie Boys, seeing as there's other tracks that are like they play out in their entirety. I'm like, I got the gist, I can see what's happening. If this is the music for the background of the club scene, let's get to the club scene without the full song play, and that happened multiple times. But yeah, the plot is so fascinating, especially with Run-DMC. It's like they're working in a car wash. Then he's ordering like 50 pairs of trainers. Then he's driving a nice car. His brother's clearly having financial troubles. It's like, what's Run's deal? You know what I mean? With money.
Dude, Run is a real jerk in this.
He's an absolute bellend.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's
No,
absolutely.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And Russell comes off like a pot of gold in this.
That's it. So I wonder if he knew if that was a sibling thing of like, you know what? You can play yourself and be a complete dick. I'm going to get someone good looking to play my role. Let's see who comes off better.
It definitely plays into the the real. There's a real life component to this where they were like, we're telling a story of early rap. Like obviously there's inconsistencies. It's a film, but
even their dad's in it. As the reference.
And I know his dad has definitely said, he's definitely called Russ before, you big dummy. He's definitely said
big dummy.
He said that. I'm like, he said that about his son before. That's exactly it. That line was delivered perfectly.
As ridiculous as the movie was, there are some really wonderful laughs in this.
Yeah, there's some good isolated moments, but as a whole experience is quite challenging at times. But the second time I watched it, I enjoyed it a lot more because I knew what I was getting myself in for. But it's the same as watching, about comparing too much to Wild Style and Beat Street and Breakdance and those other films. They're the same. You just pick out the moments of it you like, and I think you're right. It's more my experience of seeing a lot of these films back then when I was a teenager. It would have been in passing at someone's house, and then it's just on in the background, and then you might put it on again and again and again, and eventually see the whole thing in its entirety. But it's more just it's the visuals and it's the energy. But the opening scene with King of Rock is amazing. Oh, so good. And
I got really into the performances the second time around because now I know, like, okay, I'm not really watching this to like for the history lesson per se. I'm not really watching it for, you know, the scenes where they interact all that much.
Yeah.
I'm really at this point watching it so that I can like I give this film a lot of credit for it being when it was and about what it was. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? Like there weren't tons of people telling real rap stories. But I really was into the performances the second time around.
Yeah.
That second time, the Fat Boys in the all you can eat buffet was an absolute delight.
Yeah, you can see why they went on and
so
did other
dumb
films.
and wonderful. Yeah, definitely. And 100% you can see why it seemed like a Caddyshack thing where they sort of stole scenes and got a lot more coverage than maybe it was originally. I don't know if that's true or not.
It is actually true.
It seemed like it.
Okay.
What I've read was that the Fat Boys were meant to have a fairly small role in the film. Keeping in mind, like this is like not a Def Jam origin story per se. This movie is a showcase for Def Jam and Rush Entertainment artists.
Right.
So you have obviously Run-DMC were signed to Profile, so we're Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Curtis Blow was on another life. He was on Mercury at the time. So it's like, so you're getting these performances that kind of go in there. So Fat Boys, again, not part of that, but they were doing their thing. And the thing that's interesting about that is they were so enjoyable to watch in the early parts of the filming of this that they said, let's give them more. Let's give them more.
Yeah, let's give them a couple more videos. Why not?
Exactly.
And it paid off pretty good. I mean, they were really funny. They ended up doing other movies. It seemed like the right move.
Yeah, and their tracks are so catchy in the soundtrack. They're bangers.
Yeah, and
Totally.
Look, the director Michael Schultz went on to make Disorderlies with them. So like it's clearly, you know, and Disorderlies talk about movies on the background. That's one of those films that was on basic cable, and you know, I just have it on as a kid. It was clearly marketed to us as kids as meant to be a.
I couldn't tell you a thing that happened in it, but I know I've seen it 3 times. Yeah, and it's awesome, and it's really fun.
I remember the cover. I remember seeing the cover in the video shot, but again, I'm not sure if I've seen it. I thought it's in because my era would have been more seeing House Party, like mid-90s. And I love the fact that Full Force are in this at the end as the kind of like the heavies.
Enforcers. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So that obviously got someone's attention because they played that same role again in House Party.
Yeah.
But that was a little surprise to see that. I was like, oh, wicked.
Yeah, it's funny those Inception-y bits like that. Like, it's say we like there's the car wash thing in the beginning of the movie, and the director had done the movie Car Wash in the 70s.
Yes, okay.
So it's like a self-referential moment there too. So there's a lot of that interesting stuff in that.
Yeah, it's cool. No, I did enjoy it. But yeah, I'm glad we agree that Run was a real dick.
What a jerk.
Yeah. I mean, and I think DMC and Jam Master Jay, they probably picked the better role. They came off real well. They look good.
Jam Master Jay was wild in this. Jam Master Jay, you saw like the real Jam Master Jay in some moments. And it was just like, wow. DMC maybe has one of the worst performances of this because they basically give him one line and it's a monologue. And it's in the club as he's like chastised. And it's just not fair. They gave him like 7-8 lines to like basically tell Russ, you know, what he was doing wrong by his brother. And it's just like, don't make him do this. Give him like Jam Master Jay had a couple of throwaways. He was mostly buried in the mix. And then when LL Cool J shows up uninvited to audition, Jam Master Jay goes into his coat.
Like he's going to shoot LL Cool J.
Like he's going to shoot him. And it's like, this is amazing. This is exactly what I wanted to see.
Right.
Like, this felt like a weird improv moment. That was just like, no, this is perfect. This is what happens when you have non-actors and you put them in that setting. They might just be themselves.
Yeah, and the fact they were all sat on the bed, like they recreated the dorm room from Rick Rubin's NYU days. It's like, why? No one's explained there's a bed in the the record offices. It's so funny.
It's love good. That.
Yeah, man.
I think one of my favorite scenes was them in the bank demanding a loan and sitting down and the guy, like, it opens on him being like, you want $50,000? And he's like, maybe more.
Yeah.
That was excellent. What a line. Oh, maybe more, man. I mean, like, you tell us.
Yeah.
We're running this sick record label. And he was like, I'm not going to give you anybody.
Yeah, I still couldn't really understand the financial troubles they got all these records. I guess it's a cash flow thing, but yeah,
Right.
everyone else around them seemed to be pretty flush with money, which is what reminded me of the Downtown 81, where
Right.
Basquiat's walking around like, I'm really struggling. And everyone's like, yeah, but no empathy, no support.
Yeah.
Just like, I hear you.
No one's buying a painting.
That's the other thing.
No
is
one's
that
stepping in to help out. It's like,
it
all these people
took
could help him.
it took someone else going to Run and being like, hey, you know, your brother's like getting the crap kicked out of him, and he's like, she had to slap him across the face and be like, your brother's gonna die. And he was like, oh shit. Okay,
Yeah.
word.
And he like had the money, and he had the money to pay.
He was fine. He could have
And he had the money to pay
any time.
Run had the money to
Anytime.
pay him. Like he could have, he had it in his wallet.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
the finances of this film are insane. And the second time I watched it, it actually infuriated me.
Yes.
I watched it with my wife, and she's just like, what's going on with this? How much money does he actually owe? And you find out it's like, it's $5,000. And if they're selling the amounts of records that they're selling, they're getting these things out there.
Yeah.
Again, it's a fault of two things. One, like $5,000 doesn't seem like a large amount of money. The same way $20,000 is an offer from Mercury Records, or sorry, Galaxy Records, which I assume was a Universal dig or nod.
I assume,
yeah.
You know, so it's like if Galaxy Records is $20K is what they're offering as a starting conversation starter, and then he owes $5,000 to JB, and so there's.
But then they offer 500,000 to the rappers themselves.
But there's also a period
like
of time.
You're offering individual 500,000. I would have just gone to the dude and been like, "Oh, you want 100,000? I'll like move you down from there."
Yeah.
But then it's like the timeline is enough. Like I'm trying to figure out how much time is passing in these scenes. How long has he had to pay this person back? Why?
Yeah, it felt like he lent it
in
that morning, and by the evening he wants his money back or half the label.
It's like full force is coming after him. Like at the end of the day,
you got to think too that in this era, it's worth saying, in this era, you're in a checks in the mail era.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get checks for this stuff for like months at a time.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
So is it 6 months?
So I
between
can
when he gets the loan. Like when is it? 3 days?
I could see him being in trouble for getting a loan from somebody. What I can't see is why that person in whatever year. What year was this? 1985. 85. Yeah, in 1985, if someone comes up to you and like I loaned you $5,000 yesterday. Where is it?
Yeah.
They get laughed off the street. Like, what are you talking about? Where is it? I'm like, give me a couple of weeks. Like these people have to come. They have to send me checks in the mail. These record stores. That's just how it works, dude.
Yeah.
Someone who's
we haven't even been able to ship the records out yet. That was the other thing that I loved is the turnaround time from when he got that loan. Mm-hmm. Rick Rubin walks into work the next day and everything's boxed up and ready to go.
That's why I don't understand. Like, what pressing plant can do that? We just
needed this $5,000 to release the records today.
Yeah, but like say, Run looked like he was getting paid. So how come?
Yeah,
like you think that would be the first conversation? Maybe speak to your brother, say, "Listen, we're just gonna have to hold back your check while we're sorting out the cash flow because we're selling more." Than anyway, it was wild.
Like,
I will say that Run probably wouldn't have taken that very well as a character in this movie.
Probably, yeah. He was really, not likable.
What a jerk.
Yeah.
His interactions with everyone, even his bandmates, everyone.
Yeah. And the women
really standoffish.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that, just like putting Sheila E on stage and them being pissed off that's maybe not the right thing to do. Because when I watched it again, I'm like, oh, Russell liked Sheila E. He liked her performance. He obviously likes her as a person. It's not his brother's role to stick her on stage when that's their gig. And
right.
I think that's a pretty straightforward thing to say.
Okay, man.
And Run is just not happy about anything.
We don't want to pay you for a performance you didn't do.
Yeah.
Do you understand where we're coming from?
Yeah.
And his basic response is, "I'll kill you."
Yeah.
All right. Well, if that's what's up, man, I guess this is just we're at an impasse. Let's fight.
Just like think of all the times you've been to a concert, a rap show, and there's like 1,000 people who are on before the headliner, the person you're actually there to see, who were never billed or never listed, and you have no sense of when the headliner is going to go on at this point. It go on in the next 5 minutes or go on in 5 hours. And
could be 3 in the morning, could be tomorrow afternoon. Who knows?
And it's like I didn't want to Holly Rock that much. Like, all respect to Sheila.
It was a lot of Holly Rock.
It's a lot of Holly Rock.
It was.
I haven't Holly Rocked that much since I was a wee lad.
It's just not. It just wasn't my. And like, this is what's crazy to me too. Is like, this is Sheila E. with Prince. You know, he's like the ghost in this movie. Like, you know, his imprimatur is on all those tracks that she does. Obviously, he's credited in the credits
and is mentioned as well.
Yeah, as mentioned. But it's like, this is after The Glamorous Life. Like, she already has a massive hit. So there's a reason why she's top billed in this movie. A massive hit. Like, she's there. And so, like, it's just wild to me to see her in this capacity, doing, you know, a song that didn't even make it onto her next album. Like, that song gets a lot of play. It does not appear on her next album. Like, A Love Supreme does. I mean, like, whatever. Love Sincere. I'm forgetting the name right now. I'm gonna be so mad at myself. But like, she has a single from her next record is on there, but she doesn't play. She plays extended. I Love Bizarre. Thank you. So she plays this weird, you know, sort of, you know, rap hybrid that wasn't really characteristic of what she did. And like, and obviously she was an accomplished musician even before that. And I think she did okay as an actress in this. I think in terms of her performance, I think she
she's good.
Did as well as she could against the folks.
Solid.
Like, the worst performance in this film, I think I'm going to say, and I say this as a fan, so it hurts me, but it's Cool Rock Ski. It's just like, it hurts me because, I mean, look, I'm a big Fat Boys fan. He's the only one who's still left of the original three.
Yeah.
Which, of course, there's a sadness that goes with that. I thought Prince Marky D was hysterical. Human Beatbox was a riot. And then, like, Cool Rock Ski's whole role in this is to be the guy who says, no, I don't want to perform.
Yeah.
That's like the only thing they didn't give him anything in the script, but then he delivers it, but just to like, no.
He never really has a reason. He's just like, I don't want to do it. Like, well,
even though he just performed at school after the pig fetus scene. He's like, you do it in front of that is the most enthusiastic crowd I think I've ever seen in a school.
I gotta
outside
say,
of Greece, you know.
If you're the teacher of that class, first of all, I thought it was actually pretty brilliant that they got kicked out of class to go perform in the hallway, to be early, so they could be there when everybody was coming out.
Now that's a musical.
I thought that was pretty awesome. Yeah, that's straight musical theater right there. But if you're having people dissect pig fetuses in your class, and you don't smell one of them being cooked on the Bunsen burner, then you deserve your fate. You deserve your fate. They're cooking a pig inside that classroom, and nobody's like, oh, someone's cooking one of their pigs. No one. They're just like, the dude's just like,
on a spit.
Roasted it on a spit. Just made a homemade spit and roasted it on a Bunsen burner.
There's some great sight gags in this, and that's one of the best.
That's
ones.
a great
like
sight gag.
That when Cool Rock Ski puts a cake in his lunchbox. Like,
incredible. Oh, that's right. Maybe my favorite part of the film.
The opening credits are great.
They're so really good. Wonderful.
Oh yeah.
That and each one of them getting an individual different pizza handed to them in the buffet line.
Yeah.
That each one gets a gigantic pizza, and then they just stack food on top of the pizzas. Each one of them. Then they finish all that food, go back, and the dude's like, right, here's another pizza. I feel you, dude.
And a provolone, a giant provolone.
Provolone.
Which disappears during the next bit of montage.
Yeah, they eat it.
Like,
I guess they ate it.
They eat the provolone?
That's a lot of provolone, man.
That might have actually
listen, the Fat Boys had a what's the word I'm looking for? They had a reputation, but I don't believe that they could eat a whole provolone. I feel like we would have heard that story. Somebody in a movie or a podcast would have been like, "Oh, I was with the Fat Boys when they ate a whole provolone, a shoulder of provolone." I was there. It was incredible.
And obviously, it's like over the story becomes like so many like these artists, these hip hop artists who had fat or big in their name, like they lost weight over time. Cool Rock Ski slimmed down, is like quite fit. Prince Marky D lost a lot of weight in his lifetime. So like there's always that, but that they were playing that for laughs, that it works in this context because it's just like, it's so absurd. It's not like sometimes you see like the way that weight is presented on a film and you're like, okay, that's like a punching down. Like these guys are, clearly say like, this is ridiculous. What we're doing is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
And they got to come to their own conclusion as the band to be like, our name is dumb. Why don't we just celebrate who we are?
Yeah.
Well, that played out in the movie, didn't it? Because they started as Disco 3, even though they play a track and say we're the Fat Boys before they chose to change their name into the Fat Boys. But yeah, I guess that was their whole thing.
There was
like,
a little bit of inconsistency
themselves
in their story.
A little bit, but they won their talent show when they were themselves. So I guess that was the moral in the story, wasn't it? To be yourself. Yeah.
And apparently that scene is one of the things, if we're fact checking this film, it's one of the things that's actually true, is that they were discovered and signed at this Coca-Cola Tin Pan Apple contest. It was at Radio City Music Hall, apparently. And they were won first prize and they were signed based on that. So it is actually an accurate origin story for them, interestingly enough.
Tin Pan Apple, bad name. That's all. I just think it's a bad name.
So my wife, as you know, Jeff, one of her gigs is she fact checks and copy edits and whatnot. So she started doing some work while we were watching this movie to like figure out this Tin Pan Apple thing. And later, a few years later, the Fat Boys were signed to a label that was called, that they may have created or partly called Tin Pan.
So that's
Apple.
like a little Easter egg for those in the know, which I was not.
It's wild. It's kind of wild how that is.
That is wild. Now I like it better.
It's interesting because like I love looking at this, and I think if we get back to what we were talking about earlier, is that at the time I might have felt a way about it, but looking at it now, this is a different perspective. If I had seen it then, for me, like obviously I fell deep into the songs because these are songs I recognize, songs I love, so it was very easy to kind of to warm in there. But like it's also interesting to find out like who was involved in this film, and like I started looking through like. As a joke, I started looking to see who the continuity supervisor was on it when the Fat Boys line happened in there. So I started looking at that stuff. I see some people who didn't make movies again or didn't make a lot of stuff. There was that. But then you have like I saw this in the opening credits, is you have the director of photography is Ernest Dickerson, who obviously Juice in 92. He did Surviving the Game, the Ice-T vehicle. Jeff and I have talked about this on another episode.
An excellent, weird film. I love that movie.
And he did all those Spike Lee. Oh, that's like it's like
Ice-T is hunted by rich men and has to find a way to survive, and it's phenomenal.
Okay.
The rich men include was it Rutger Hauer, Forrest Whitaker,
Gary Busey,
and F. Murray Abraham.
Yeah.
And that's who you're looking at. It's an incredible nihilistic dark
film. Is a weird cast and it is awesome. I really like it.
I'll check that out. It's
fun. But it's great to kind of see the people who were involved in this. Obviously, like some of these, not a lot of these actors, these artists went on to do more acting. LL Cool J probably being
I was going to say
all of them.
It's wild that like he's even less. I think he's got as many bars as the Beastie Boys essentially.
Yeah.
And has the one scene and is mostly dismissed until he starts rhyming, and then they're like, "Oh shit, this dude's pretty good." And then you never hear from him again, like the rest of the film, right? Like, did I miss it?
But he roadies. You see him at some of these things like backstage.
Yeah. He's in the background, but he's not rapping anymore. He doesn't get a video. He's like one of the least billed people, and becomes wildly more famous than any one other person that worked on this.
I wonder if he was in it before the Fat Boys took more screen time.
I wonder about a couple of these acts.
Yeah.
Beasties too, where I'm like,
right.
Or maybe they were like the and they're like, you know what, I'll be in it, but just a little bit. I'm not sure how this is going to go. So maybe they didn't want to sign up for too much.
Beasties and LL Cool J are the only two Def Jam signees in the movie.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody else is either Rush Entertainment or your New Edition, and you're not by that. Like everything's Rush Management or your New Edition.
I love the way New Edition was used and played in this movie. I really loved the way that they were gussied up and they were doing their like soul pop. And it was like the other rappers didn't look at it with disdain per se, but they were like, oh, shit, that's gonna win. They're not doing that. Like, that's just like popular music. What are we supposed to do against that?
Yeah.
It wasn't viewed. They weren't even like in competition with them. They were just like, oh, well, who's here to play for second place, basically. And I thought that was cool. because I feel like that's the way it was viewed. Like, I like New Edition fine. Cool It Now is a jam. But at the time, if you're trying to get in, if you're trying to break into a business and you come in and you see those dudes, you're like, well, I ain't doing that. I'm not the Temptations of my era, basically. I don't have that style. I just don't have it. It was cool. I loved that.
But then it goes back to this question of like, why is it that like the Beasties and LL got so little of their songs, relative speaking, played in the movie, but we get like that whole ass New Edition performance, and we got that one, I don't know, that rock and roll rockabilly performance by that one artist whose name escapes me.
Looked. There's not a
Chaz or something.
There's
like
not
that.
a wealth of information about this movie from non-boring sources. Does that make sense? Like, I read the Wikipedia, whatever. I poked around IMDb. There was some stuff here and there. But like people talking about this movie, send us some cool stuff if you're out there listening. Like I want to know more. But I couldn't find anything that was very good. There are people that acknowledged that it happened, and some things that were like, the real story is this sort of thing.
Yeah, same. I didn't find much.
But not a whole lot of like, this is what it was like to make this film. I didn't find any of that.
Yeah, same. I was looking and thought I would discover some bits and pieces about it.
I'm glad I'm just not bad at the internet then. There's another source here being like, no, you're not.
I think there's been some discussions that it's been included in around, the 50th anniversary year last year. I think there was some of that went on. And I think there's been kind of...
That's what reminded me of it. I think somebody mentioned it at one of the shows I went to.
Yeah.
And was like, oh man, blah, blah, blah. Y'all remember Krush Groove? And I was like, oh, I do. Is this how we're supposed to react at rap shows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember it was me.
Yeah, I just remember the logo. I remember the logo and the poster and the cover, but yeah, it's funny I didn't see it. But yeah, even that I was trying to find who designed the logo and the jacket, because the Def Jam logo is iconic. The Krush Groove logo, not so much. So it's how come we didn't get the same people? Because they did a really good job. You know what I mean?
I went to see that new Godzilla. They ran a limited edition in black and white for like a week for like Oscar bait stuff. So I went to the downtown Manhattan, like FIDI, Financial District, Alamo.
Yeah.
And they have the like tribute to Kim's video zone that's sort of
right on
in the middle of walking through there. And they have a giant, I'd never noticed it before, but because I watched it this week, they have a gigantic display of just the cover of Krush Groove.
Wow.
Sitting in front of Kim's video right now.
That's
and I was like, whoa, that's awesome. Like, what a weird coincidence.
Yeah. The logo is an interesting thing because I can't really remember the specific logo, but I love the jacket, and just kind of, for me, it makes me think about all of the different stylistic choices in this film. It's like, I don't know if anybody used wardrobe or they just came in with what they had. Like much black leather, which is the worst thing to perform in, especially if you are the Fat Boys. Like, you can just see at the end of the human beatbox is just drenched. These guys are soaked with sweat because they're performing in black leather. And like, and Sheila E.'s outfit, like during Holly Rock, is like there's a vest over like a tank, and then the pants are like Matador pants.
First performance, the dress in the first performance, band included, is out of pocket. It's wild what these people are wearing and doing during this performance, and it totally works. I really liked it, but it was also like I could not stop staring at like what the saxophone was wearing. The saxophonist was like head to toe nonsense, just like, I'll take something from each rack and I don't want to know what it is.
Yeah,
just do it.
And Curtis Blow with a top hat as well. It's like, that's a strong look. That was a wild choice.
Every single thing that look,
80s, baby.
I could look at the screen and be like, could anybody pull any of these looks off right now? Like, it would take Lil Nas X basically doing a shot-for-shot remake to make this work right now. I can't imagine any of these looks having any sort of like ability. There's incredible choices. The top hat is what I forgot for a moment. It's so wild.
The bow tie. But well, Run-DMC, I mean, they look that was iconic. You know, that's
Absolutely.
their look.
And they owned it.
Yeah, they weren't going to change anything about what they were doing.
But you're right. I wonder if what costume, other than the Krush Groove jacket, that's probably the only bit of costume that was put in. I think everyone else showed up in what they had.
Yeah, Rick Rubin definitely did. He definitely showed up in his. It's also so weird, if I may, to see Rick Rubin on screen now in this film, considering that he's turned himself into this sort of guru of creativity. I got gifted his book at Christmas this year. You know, I'm meaning to read it, like this, like his sort of thoughts on, you know, these are.
I've been listening to the audiobook of that.
So
it's night and day. He's a different person.
So like back then, it's just like he's just this, like, you know, he's just this dude, you know, and now he's the dude.
That's the like one of the coolest part of the come up story of all the early rap is that these people, a lot of people had to learn how to enterprise on the fly and did it brilliantly. And that's kind of what this story is trying to tell, is that the enterprising on the fly is way harder than you think it is. But the blessing is that these people were wildly talented.
Yeah.
So it's all going to work out in the end because someone is going to make money off of these brilliant performers.
Yeah. Who was the guy who ran Galaxy? Who was that guy?
He was a producer. I have to
that's right. Yes.
But he was a producer who worked with a number of different artists and managed over the years. So he was an industry guy. He was definitely part of the industry. In the same way that Sal, who plays the owner of Disco Fever, was the actual Sal who owned Disco Fever.
Okay.
The club in the South Bronx. This was his club. He was hoping that by being featured so prominently in this movie that it would do good things for his club. But as you may have read information about it, his club got shut down during the filming of this movie for permitting issues.
Right.
So I don't mean to laugh because that's such a cruel.
No, but
thing.
it's like it's a wild irony there. Like it's a wild
womp
thing.
Womp.
Yeah.
Like womp womp. Oh,
kind of the thing that was happening to the record label, Krush Groove record label, in real life happened to that club. They were like, yo,
basically
we're like right there. If we can just get this movie to market, we're gonna be they're here. The permitting people are here.
God. Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah, that sucks.
I'm a little mad about. There's one thing I'm a little mad about that I found out after that, because like we watch a lot of movies for this show, and we watch a lot of bad movies for this show. Not all intentional.
Yeah, this is a real delight compared to most of the things
we're so grateful to have watched this, given some of the things that we've watched over the years.
That's maybe why I love it so much, is that I'm like, I was entertained, at a good time. This is great.
We have Stockholm syndrome essentially about our picks. But like one of the things that made me mad is like what often comes up when we were talking about these movies that we watch is it's like, okay, was it nominated for any Razzies? Because there's oftentimes we've watched films that are so iconically bad that they're like worst actor, you know, things that we've done this.
They are decidedly the worst movie of their year as far as critics are concerned,
or in contention. And I was horrified to discover that this movie was nominated for one Razzie.
Really?
Specifically, this is what really made me mad, for worst original song.
Okay.
For the Frat Boys All You Can Eat.
Do they not have eyes connected to a heart? Do they have ears connected to a heart? That was so much fun.
It was a good song.
I think All You Can Eat, I think that was actually that ended up being cut into the music video they used for All You Can Eat ultimately. Like I think the same director.
How could you not?
Like I think the same director did that. Why not make it? So I was so upset. Are you curious at all to know? It didn't win the Razzie, thankfully. It did not. It was not the worst. Are you curious to know what the winner was?
Okay, yeah. 85?
85, yeah.
I don't know. Hit me.
It's the theme song to Rambo 2 First Blood. The song is called Peace in Our Life, and it is performed by Frank Stallone.
Yeah.
Frank Stallone.
I knew it. Yeah, I know Peace in Our Life. That's a jam.
Sylvester Stallone.
They're wrong. They're wrong.
Oh, that's a jam too?
No. It's horrible. It's one of the worst songs ever. No, I was going to try to go with the joke there, but no.
Yeah, no.
I don't want to be on record as saying that's a good song.
I've seen Frank Stallone live.
The movie's crazy.
I've seen him live. He opened for Don Rickles in Vegas. I saw him once. That was an interesting night. see Frank Stallone performing. He's doing his Sinatra kind of routine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was curious because, given your history and your experience in hip hop, there's these iconic figures in there, but also like the music they're making definitely, I can hear the influence and impact of that on your music, on your catalog. Definitely, you're sort of affinity
Okay.
for that style and that approach. I'm wondering, sort of like, have you, in over the course of your career, have you had any interactions with any of these people, with any of these artists, whether being on the same bill at a festival or in some way? Have you ever had any interactions?
No, I wish, but no. Run-DMC was like hugely influential to me, as were the Beastie Boys. But both of them I came to after the fact. Again in the 90s. I, I vaguely remember Walk This Way when I was really young, and I vaguely remember the first Beastie Boys album, my friend's older brother having it. But it was not till kind of Check Your Head that I really got into Beastie Boys, and then I backtracked and found Paul's Boutique and License to Ill. And with Run-DMC, I came to them after the fact as well, because I was listening to rave and hardcore music when I was like 12, 13. And that's like the precursor to jungle and drum and bass. There was this sort of like up-tempo, hardcore music, and they were taking a lot of hip-hop samples. So I remember hearing the King of Rock vocal, but sped up. And I had it on this 12-inch, this dance record, and I put it on 33. So it was like the opposite of discovering jungle. Play the break slower. Wow, that sounds like a rapper. And my friend's older brother is like, yeah, that's Run-DMC. I was like, what's Run-DMC? It's like, you need to listen to all this. So I got hugely into them as a teenager and just loved that, the back and forth, and just how dynamic they were.
Right.
Absolutely incredible. The first, I guess, 4 albums, loved them. But no, I've never had any interaction with them. No interaction with the closest I got to Beastie Boys was for myself, I did an illustration of the Paul's Boutique album cover. The kind of the gatefold. And when first time I went to New York, me and my brother stood on Ludlow and Rivington, and we were like, fuck, this is the corner, here we are. And I redrew that album sleeve as a black and white illustration for, I forget who it was for, but it was like it's an exhibition where you reimagined a record sleeve, and different artists did that. And I was like, right, I'm going to do the gatefold and do everything. And then I made that into a screen print for a retrospective exhibition. And I started illustrating for a wine magazine over here called Noble Rot, and Mike D writes for the magazine sometimes. So I've illustrated some articles he's written, and I passed on one of these prints to him via the magazine. But that's the closest I ever got to Beastie Boys. But yeah, man, growing up, that's what I wanted to be. I didn't want to be a solo MC. I really wanted to be in a group like the Beastie Boys. And the first incarnation of my group, Mongrels, was a live band that was very much drawing inspiration from that Check Your Head era of Beastie Boys. And it would have been the early days of the Roots and the Goats, and I guess Rage Against the Machine and Beck and all these Nirvana, stuff like that was happening at the time. So yeah, my ideal situation would have been to be in a group like that. You know what I mean? Cool. But I ended up being a solo MC, and it turned out different.
Yeah, it turned out great.
It turned out okay. Yeah, it turned out okay.
It's doing all right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, man, I want to thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you.
This was awesome. A lot of fun to have a chance to talk to you about,
and
of all things, like, we'd love to just be able to find a movie, and when we can find one that's actually everybody enjoys, that's a relief, because it doesn't.
Yeah, it's cool, and I'm glad that we hadn't seen it before as well, because it was nice seeing it, a fresh set of eyes. Yeah. So out of the, you're seeing a lot of films from New York, right? So you're sort of
so I mean, we said loads. Yeah, loads.
I'm just curious about the exterior shots of like locations and things like that. Are they quite emotive for you then, seeing that era of New York?
It's something where I absolutely, having grown up here, I absolutely love to see these shots because I grew up in the 80s and 90s in New York. And so when in the opening credits, when you see the cityscapes, like that to me is exactly what I remember. Kind of, and like this, you can see the UN at one point, and that's a shot that is from Queens. I know exactly where
Yeah.
you would have to
Okay,
be.
that's what I
They were
wanted to know.
probably in Long Island City shooting
Okay.
from the docks down there. And the same way of seeing some of these storefronts, like I love that in movies. Like we watched a movie last year with Billy Woods and Blockhead as our guests. It's a movie called Street Smart. And it's Morgan Freeman, Christopher Reeve, really interesting, strange in some ways, but interesting film.
It's really
But
weird.
it's supposed to
Okay.
take place in New York, and for budgetary reasons, they shot the majority of it in Montreal. And so as a
Okay.
New Yorker, it's in the 1980s, like probably 87, 88. And I'm watching this and I'm going like, oh, this is definitely not. But there were a handful of shots that were done in New York, and you can tell which ones they are because it's
Okay.
supposed to be in Times Square during that. So when we were at
Right.
the Sbarro scene in Times Square for the Fat Boys All You Can Eat portion, I'm watching this moment and I'm looking at everything around it, being like, okay, Desperately Seeking Susan is on the marquee of the movie theater down there. And I remember that whole setup because I
Okay.
remember like when I came of age, like into the 90s, I would go to Times Square and it was in that transition period
Mm.
between the seediest old days and the kind of Disney storification that happened, particularly under Giuliani. So I would love seeing that sort of stuff on screen, and I always enjoyed. And this film was no exception. There, I was so happy to see
Yeah.
that.
I mean, as an outsider, just going first time I went to New York, it felt like being in a film set because that's something I've grown up watching on in movies and TV shows. And when I'm there, it's almost like being in the Truman Show. Like all these extras have been put there for my benefit to make it feel authentically like a film set. And then,
Mm.
oh, but this is just how it is every day. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
there's not that many films that get made where I'm from, but there's so many from New York and certain parts of New York. And you walk into those neighborhoods, even like way after the fact, 20, 30 years later, and
Oh
you've got
yeah.
that same vibe. We watched Street Trash recently. Have you seen
Oh
that?
yeah. Sure. Yeah.
That's New Jersey, right?
Yeah. That's a
Is it?
doozy of a movie.
Yes, that was a wild one. But yeah,
It's
the
brutal.
same. Just trying to figure out the exactly where it's shot based on the
The
kind of location
the
and what's in the
places
background.
I lived like right down the street from where they did Street Trash for like a year or two.
Okay,
And recognized like they were in Greenpoint, Brooklyn.
right.
And it was guerrilla. Like they didn't, you didn't really have to have permits to film there. It
Yeah.
looks weird because there's no development or anything. That's just what it was then.
So it's Greenpoint. I've been to Greenpoint, but we thought it was New Jersey.
That
We're trying
part
to
of
figure out the
that
distance
part of
from.
Greenpoint was like untouched until this sort of modern gentrification era.
Yeah, when everyone got
And
pushed
now it
out.
is wildly developed and everything. But like back then, it was just broken gravel and like stores where you could buy whatever it is they were buying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's like
bootleg destruction liquor.
it's like I've read stories about like I'm a big fan of word sound records, and so like
Yes.
those I love this episode. Like you read these stories from like Skiz Fernando about recording with like DJ Spooky and all these guys like in the and in Greenpoint is where it was based, and they're just like it was just like warehousey kind of
Yeah.
bombed out, and this
A
is like
lot
the
of
mid to late
rubble.
90s. It was really
Yeah.
something. So
Yeah, that was
yeah.
a great label. I love that label.
Oh,
They did the
oh.
Blackwoods, the 10-inch series with the
Mhm.
Anti-Pop Consortium and the
Mm.
Jungle Brothers and Truck Stop,
Yeah.
Sabash from New Kingdom. That's how I met Sabash and
Oh, yeah?
Scotty was through Skiz. Yeah, he did a
Nice.
remix for me years ago. And then, yeah, this time I went to New York with my brother. Then we hooked up with Sabash and Scotty. But that was more Lower East Side. We were hanging out. And then I'd go back multiple times and then end up hanging out in downtown Brooklyn with those guys. But yeah, that's how we became friends, through Skiz.
That's so cool. I mean, I'm such a big fan. I kind of came onto them in the mid 90s and just devoured all that stuff and Mr. Dead, metabolic stuff. Like I was just a
Yeah.
huge fan. Sensational, obviously.
Sensational was amazing. It was a real good time. I wish I'd lent into that stuff more, because at the time I lent more into this kind of more caricature, like not really taking myself so seriously. But there was other versions and other types of music I was making with my friends that were a bit more just off key and abstract, and I wish I'd kind of lent into that a bit more, because there were these moments where, say, like Word Sound and some of these other labels, I'd support those artists. You talked about Prince Poe, and
Sure, yeah.
support these people at LP, but I wasn't really making that music myself. So I think other people were seeing this sort of like the embryonic stages of what could be, but I didn't really pursue that until much, much later. Doing this stuff was Spectacular Diagnostics, and then that's when I kind of come to it late in the day. But like, yeah, let's actually lean into this more abstract stuff, because I've had those sensibilities since I was a teenager, and it popped up on a few records, but I sort of went on a bit of a detour. So I took the scenic route, come back round, and doing it later.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there's some terrific records that are coming out of this. The stuff that you've been putting out these past few years have been great, and I feel like for an artist of with a discography like yours and a catalog like yours, to be making a record as good as Hauntology Codes at this stage is just something. And again, I think Spectacular Diagnostics is a really, really like thoughtful producer. What he's putting together, and
he's great.
I admire what he's doing. So it all makes sense.
Yeah, it'll be very different doing those raps with a different backdrop. Even though, like, the last 2 albums I put out remix EPs just to see what that sounds like, because that's interesting for me. I'm like, oh yeah, wow, that's what I sound like on this other type of production. But yeah, the partnership works. My words over his beats, and it's good. It gives me a lot of freedom to kind of lean into that territory. Yeah.
And how does that partnership compare to the one between Russ and Run in this movie? Is it as contentious?
How many times have you gotten to a backstage fight, like fisticuffs? How many times?
Only a couple.
You don't have to tell me. Okay. Yeah, I don't need an exact number, but that's good. It's good to know.
Yeah, only a couple of times.
Just a couple of times.
It's generally fine.
That's low. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right. Well done.
Peace.
Well done.
And generally speaking, if one of us is stuck for money and the other's literally got that money in their pocket, we tend to help each other out rather than allow them to be beaten up as well.
Yeah,
multiple times.
By members
you
of
have to get slapped by someone and be like, "Oh, fuck! You mean like trouble? Oh, I'm on it. Don't worry about it. This thing will be solved in 5 minutes."
Run's like approach towards Sheila E was not good at all.
Why? Okay, he came there not for that purpose.
No.
None.
Why was he there?
Really didn't have a purpose, and maybe he was looking for Russell.
Yeah,
and thought he might be there.
We don't really
Doesn't seem like it.
But he kind of just walks in there and is like, "You know what? I don't like you. I don't want to be here." Like this,
very entitled. It's just like
there's no speaking to one of us. She's like, "Yeah, come in," and he's like, "No, you know what? Fuck this place and fuck you. I'm out of here."
It's a lot of. He's pissed off. He's a pissed off person.
He's been angry.
Yeah. He's angry. Yeah.
But
we don't particularly know why. I did like that the rest of his band was like, "Dude, if you're wilding like this on your brother, what do you think is going to happen?"
Yeah, that was a great scene.
Yeah.
He's like,
so do your thing. Yeah, and then he throws a wad of money at a couch.
Yes.
It's like, mad at this money. Damn this money. I'm so angry at this wad of cash.
That's a good film. I might watch it again now.
Yeah,
I think I'm going to watch the other ones that we were talking about, because I haven't seen those in forever either.
Now I need to go back to a Beat Street watch. I'm due.
Beat Street's on Tubi, I think.
It is. I think they tried to show it to me.
They tried to show me too. Yeah, it came on last night, and I was like, "Put a pin in it. I'll be back."
Yeah, it's good. My friend likes watching it at Christmas. He's like, "It's a Christmas."
Oh, okay.
It is. Oh, that's a good one. I
can see that.
I was like it. The scene that Alcoholics sampled on "We Came to Party," and then like just seeing that, I'm like, oh yeah, because I love Alcoholics' first 2 albums. I was big fan of that, and then it wasn't until I watched Beat Street again, just randomly, I was like, oh shit, yeah, that's what they used, and it's such a dope. And the guy bites open the beer can, and the painting of the octopus DJ behind them, and again, just like no inhibition.
It's been so long.
There's hardly anyone there. There's the lights are up, but everyone's just happily dancing, in a very thin crowd, and it's dope. It's a good film. It's a good film.
Yeah.
But
all right, that's my rewatch tonight. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm into that.
Yeah, man.
I want to talk about something with this film. We didn't get to cover it much with the guests because we were having a lot of fun.
We were.
Who was made a saint and who was made a sinner in this obviously fake version of rap being formed?
Sure, sure.
I'm not quite sure that that's the real story. A lot of those people kind of flip-flop.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Reverend Run is a bad guy, but he comes across in this movie as really just
A surly character.
Yeah, hard to deal with.
Run, I don't know much about Run's life, but I feel like Run, not like a wild human who would like betray his family. I mean, especially like it doesn't seem that way to me in the
later on
he
does like reality TV later. He did Run's House, like, and he just seemed like, like an affable dad, sort of thing. I no. At the same time, Russell Simmons, we know
the hardworking entrepreneur.
Yeah.
There was other things going on there.
There's a moment in the film where he offers Sheila E. an escort home. And unfortunately, when you look at it in these contexts,
I was a little like, ooh.
It's a chill. It's a cringy chill. And obviously it helps that he's not played by himself in the film. He's right. The only people who's not.
And that we know this story is fake. This is not at all.
So it's Blair Underwood.
Yeah.
But like Russell Simmons, the allegations against him are very real and very chilling. And it does, again, one of the things of watching this film from years later, and seeing that going like, okay, is this this maybe seems a little off, especially because it does ultimately lead to adult situations between these two characters. But like in a consensual way, which clearly is not what he's accused of. So like, I don't want to go out and just kind of not address this. I think it was important for us to just say that is the thing that exists.
As a house guest, I'm just going to tell you guys, if you're ever house guests with someone, I don't recommend going into their bedroom and just lighting candles while they're trying to sleep.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, no matter your intention, you may not have the proclivity to, you may not be trying to procure sex there, but it's just a weird look to like, if somebody rolled in my bedroom, was staying in my house and just started lighting candles, I'd be like, first of all, where did you get the candles? Did you fly with those? What's going on? And secondly, I'd be creeped out.
Well, it's like what Vanilla Ice. Remember Vanilla Ice and Cool as Ice when he
he just kept sneaking in that woman's bedroom and just being there when she woke up.
So disturbing. And
the 80s did that a lot. There was a stalkier element, I feel like. Maybe it's still there and I just don't see it. I just avoid it.
I don't know.
There was a stalkier element in the 80s and 90s where dudes could do wild shit and it was basically just to be laughed at. Like, he's persistent.
And like, I know that we're gearing up now for the second season of rapper movies. So we're probably going to get into some dicey territory at some point. I think we've largely managed to avoid it for the most part, but I think we're going to get into some stuff throughout these. There's definitely going to be some more serious dramas in this. There's going to be some choices that are made. We've watched some films, not for this show, but of late that have sort of had these moments. I think about when we saw Sugar Hill, and Yvonne Curtis Hall's role in that film was chilling. There's a lot of stuff that we've seen. So we're sort of getting a sense of this sort of what things were like in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s in film, which is largely where we tend to draw from for these. But I think we've got a lot of interesting stuff ahead of us. So I hope everybody enjoyed what we did with Kid Acne. I certainly did.
Side quest. Snoop Dogg and Mike Epps are putting out a We're Coaches movie.
The Underdogs. Now,
that's the one.
We might have to consider it. I feel like
think about it.
We've talked about Snoop on this show before, and
but this is new.
Yeah,
no guess. We just do it.
We might just do it. Maybe we'll do it for our paid subscribers. I don't know. Sign up. Pay us some money. We'll watch more movies.
Do it. Come on. My kids need wine.
My children need wine.
It's the Cabbages Podcast Network.